Right, so today I'm going to show you how to animate a bouncing ball using After Effects, and it's going to end up roughly looking like this. So I'll show you how to do that. So first things first, we need to make a composition, which is going to be HD TV 1080x25, and go OK. And so what we're going to create first is the floor and the ball. So we use this, which is the shape tool. If you hold on it, then it brings you out the different options. We're going to create a rectangle. So here is our floor, and then we're going to create a circle. So we hold and click. Now, if you draw whilst you've selected the shape layer, then what you'll have is you'll create this, and you'll create a whole layer which has got both elements on it, and we don't want to do that. So I'm just undo. So we're going to click off that layer, click on the circle again, and we're going to create a new circle. So there it is. I'm pressing shift and it just constrains it to make sure it's round. So there we have it. We have our circle. Now the next problem we have is this thing here is the pivot point. So if we were to rotate this, it would kind of go around there, which is no good. So we want to move that into the middle, and we use something called the pan and behind tool, and that will just shift that up into the middle like so. That means we can move it around, and then we've got a natural center point. And next things, we're going to just rename these. So I'm going to name this the floor, and I'm going to rename this ball. There we go. So what we want to do is we want to make this come from outside the screen, bounce, and go ding 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 like that. So the way that you set keyframes in After Effects is you go to the transform, and if you want to move from there to there, you click on one of these things, which is the stopwatch. You press a keyframe, you move along the timeline to here, you move it, and then it creates animation in between them. And that's essentially what we're going to be doing. So first things first, we're going to move this out of shot, and then we are going to set a keyframe position, go to 1, and we're going to move it down so that it hits the floor. And so that's our first keyframe. So the next one is we're going to make it move up in that direction. We're not going to make it go as high as it when it started, because it lost a bit of energy. Go down, and then we're going to make it go to 4, up a bit less distance again, go to 5, and then hit the floor again, and then 6, and I can go up again, 7, down, and 8, up, and 9, down again, there. So there we have it, we've done our animation. So let's have a look at it. This is the preview, and it just loads everything into the RAM, and so you can look at things real time at the end. I'll just move my microphone closer. So it's a bit kind of wavy. So what we want to do is we want to make this a little bit less wavy. What we wanted to do is hit the floor and go hard. And if you see here, these things are called keyframes, and these have got little handles, and you can move them around, and it creates a smoothness between animation, because sometimes you want that, but we don't in this case. We want it to hit there and be hard. So I'm going to right click on this keyframe and go to keyframe interpolation, and what that does is it brings up the way that these keyframes work, and we want this to be linear. Okay, so that means that this will come in hard, and then we want to do that for the next one here. We go right click on the keyframe, go keyframe interpolation, and we're going to make that linear as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this, shift click on the keyframes, and I'm going to change them all in one go, and I'm going to turn them all linear. So now let's have a look at what happened. So it's a bit harder, it's a bit ponderous, it's a bit slow, and so we need to kind of make these keyframes shorter, because this needs to come up and it needs to take less it needs to spend less time in the air, because it won't spend the same amount of time doing this bounce as it will do in this bounce, because it's not going as high or as far. So we need to change that firstly. So this one is probably a bit too long, so I am going to grab all of those keyframes, which is dragging over them, and just going to make them a bit shorter. So these ones are a bit closer together. These ones should be closer still. Maybe not that close. And these ones even shorter. Bring those in. And bringing these ones in, and these are getting even shorter. So now these are progressively getting shorter. It's looking a little bit better, and I want to do the final runoff at the end that it does there. And I'll keep it in screen, and I think I'm going to do a couple of just another little bounce here, just a little one, because I think it needs it. So, and we can also move these keyframes here, so we can just change them like that. So I'm just going to edit them a little bit, and I'm going to grab these little handles at the end, and I'm going to make them a bit more like hills rather than mountains, because at the moment they're a little bit sharp. So I just want to change that. In fact, that's probably all right. So let's preview that. And I want to shorten those little keyframes at the end that I just created, because they are a little bit far apart. Right, so let's see what that looks like. It's getting better, but you'll notice at the end that this just kind of goes there, and then it doesn't really. It needs to come to a gradual stop. It's just going here, and the problem is how do you change that? Well, the way that you change it is using something called a graph editor. You go into here, and it brings you up a very scary sort of looking thing, and you click on your position, and it brings you up this, which is measuring pixels per second and how long they take to get there. So what we're going to do is grab this one and drag it down, and then we want to grab this handle and pull it out, and so this is now taking a little bit longer to get there. And what we want to do is we want to flatten this out a little bit, because at the moment we want to make a smooth graph like that. See how these little dots have got closer together? These are how many frames a second it takes to get there. So I'm going to preview this thing. So it bounces. So it's improving, and it accelerates a bit, which is not good. We don't want it to do that, so I'm just going to bring that down a bit, and let's see what it does. Boing, 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 boing. So it accelerates again a little bit, so it just means that this needs to just take a little bit longer to do that. So I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. Just previewing it again. So it's looking all right. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to make it slow when it gets up into the air. And so again, you've got the similar things. So we're going to drop these down, those two properties, when it gets there and when it leaves the keyframe, and we want it to take longer to get there than it does. Want it to lose speed and then go down. So let's see what that looks like. That's better. And we want to do the same thing to these. So I'm just going to drop them down and move the handle up. And I'm going to do the same with this one. So all I'm doing is just making these, it's just taking the ball longer to get to the top of these keyframes than it is, so it's going faster than it slows. And you could really exaggerate that madly if you wanted, but I think at the end it doesn't really matter too much, but it only matters on the top ones. So let's have a look. Yeah, it does a little bit of a mad acceleration there, so we want to kind of I want to slow that down a little bit because that is way too fast. So let's preview that again. It's looking better. So I'm going to preview that. Yeah, it's looking all right. Not too bad. And because at the moment it's just taking a bit too, we just want it to slow down a little bit. We don't want it to, we want this kind of graph like that. And because we want to match the speed that's coming in at, we don't want it to sort of accelerate and then slow down. So boing, boing, boing. Yes, it's not too bad. I'm going to just make it take a little bit longer to do that. Yeah, that's looking pretty natural, and that's essentially the point of it. But all of this process is about finessing this. It's about kind of making it look more natural, and so you have to spend a lot of time mucking about with these little keyframes and getting them so that it's a nice kind of graph like this, and kind of just little things that kind of make it, and kind of making this curve in a bit so that it drops in properly. And so now it's kind of looking relatively natural. So when we play that, we should have a good end result. And that's how to animate a ball in After Effects.